How's it going, guys? Tonight we're going to talk about entheogens, esoteric knowledge, neuroscience, kind of the stuff we always talk about. It's Sunday night, just kind of casual, probably won't be on for long. Partly thought it might be good to do some AMA if any of you guys have questions or subjects that you would like me to weigh in on, offer my 2 cents for what it's worth. What we got going on here? Did we even go live successfully? Suppose we did. So at any rate, I had a different plan for tonight. Originally, I was going to do a tribute to Bob Weir, who passed away yesterday. Um, Beyond, him just being like a musical hero of mine, um, I had sort of a personal connection with him, and it's difficult to explain, but there's a lot more to this for me than just like a celebrity dying, I guess. So um, one of the reasons I don't want to be on too much tonight, I'm still processing kind of a lot of stuff that kind of comes with this. I sound kind of quiet. Let me fix that. There's just stuff that comes with it. No, it's up as loud as I can put it. I think. Yeah, I can't go any louder than that. Let's see. Check, 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 check. That should be better. All right. So that good. Anyways, though, the situation, I've told the story enough times on this channel that I don't really want to get into the nitty gritty details of it. We'll probably do that during the music stream, which I was going to do tonight, but I'm having some technical issues with my music stuff. So I had to put it off, which kind of bums me out. But the story basically kind of exemplifies everything that I talk about on this channel. Pursuing your true will, come hell or high water. How the universe sort of aligns in ways that are just absolutely improbable and ridiculous. Following your intuition, I mean, it's just like it. That's this story is basically a large part of the reason why I know all this stuff and have experienced so much of it. Um, so yeah, that should help you understand why we're passing away is quite a thing for me to process. Um, but in case you're completely unaware of the story, the sort of really condensed version is that I realized that consciousness played a role in creating a reality beyond what people kind of, normally think, the conventional expectations about that sort of thing. And so I told my mom that I was going out to California to play with one of the surviving members of the Grateful Dead, at least one of them, at least once. And I did manage to do that. Although Donna, I mean, she was a an original, not an original member. She was in the Grateful Dead. I played with her, so mission accomplished. But I almost ended up playing with Weir and Lesh as well, and I only didn't because of my own self sabotaging. Um, and the incident with Weir, I actually received specific instructions from a voice in my head telling me to go to the specific music store, sign up for lessons, and that the teacher that I picked would introduce me to Weir. And that happened exactly that way. I went down to Bananas Music, I signed up for lessons. The teacher, Vernon Ice Black, works with people like, Mariah Carey, Busta Rhymes, um, Whitney Houston, and Bob Weir. And I didn't know that. But I mentioned to him that that was my goal in California, and he took a video of me playing at the next jam session without telling me, and then sent it to Weir, and Weir responded by coming down to play with me at the next jam session, and I didn't show up because I had a feeling it was Weir, and I thought I was worthless and that he would like not care. Little did I know he'd already heard me play, and I didn't get that bit of information until a couple of months ago, and then I realized, oh my god, the thing I was afraid of wasn't even in the equation. The night that I left, where Vernon took that recording, I went by Phil Lesh's club just to get some French fries. Ended up sitting with him and his wife and watching his kids play their first show. And afterwards, he asked me for music. So the last thing I said to him was, maybe you and me and Weir can play together sometime, which was the wrong thing to say. But I said that. And little did I know that night, a recording of me was getting sent to Weir. So Lesh asked me for music that night, and I told him I had nothing because I was terrified. I wasn't expecting him to do that. And so within the space of 1 week, Lesh asked me for music. Weir decides to come and surprise me at a jam session. I blow off Phil Lesh, and I don't show up to this thing. And the reason that I'm kind of laying all this out is that when we talk about the protocol, the necessity for dealing with your fundamental priors, right? So in my case, I had these beliefs that I had no value and that I was an imposter and that nothing good ever happened to me. And I can even remember where the nothing good will ever happen to me thing came from. 2 years in a row, when I was a little kid, there was this pond that I just absolutely loved. There were little painted turtles and the algae everywhere on the shore. And 2 years in a row, my birthday party I wanted to go and have there, and it rained. And I remember driving home one of those times, and I just thought everything I do is cursed. Also, my father used to tell me that all the time, that our last name was cursed, and so everything we tried to do was doomed to failure. So I had that as well. Um, you know, but despite having the intuitive ability to put myself in a position, and that's not the only one. At the time, I was connected to Metallica's camp too, and that happened just through intuition. Um, Despite having the ability to intuitively place myself in these, totally unrealistic circumstances repeatedly, I had not edited my nervous system software sufficiently to make anything lasting of any of it. You know, so I guess what I'm saying is this is basically how I learned this stuff the hard way. The way you don't want to learn it. Well, I don't know. I would not have had these. I would not take the experiences back, even though it didn't all go the way I would have hoped. Um, Still, if you have a choice, better to do the software editing before you start trying to manifest your way into your destiny. Right? So, yeah, it's been an interesting 24 hours. I don't even want to talk about a lot of it. There's been some like supernatural level ghosty type stuff that has occurred even today. And I'm not a huge believer in that kind of thing. But the incident that occurred today was like, I'll tell you this much. I was thinking about something in relation to this, and I thought, if this is true, make the guitar dong, like it. And I heard almost immediately, loudly, the E string go dong. And at first I thought, and this would still be weird, but I thought the guitar had slipped and like, bumped into the wall, and that's what caused the vibration. But it couldn't. It couldn't. It's like it's leaning up against this metal rack, and there's nowhere for it to move, and no reason it would move. It didn't move. The string just bong and hard. So could be a coincidence, but yeah, that was pretty damn weird. Pretty damn weird. In other news, though, there's lots to be excited about. I think that what I'm seeing at least is this sort of rollout of a new paradigm. All of this stuff that I have been. It's not really conjecture, but I definitely didn't have like academic research to stand on when I first started this channel for a lot of it. And that's no longer the case in regards to pretty much anything. Even this assertion that I've made that the reason that the empires are so successful is basically that they model their systems on understanding of ancient esoteric knowledge, right? And a lot of conspiracy theorists take this, I think, too far, and they think that this means that they're summoning Moloch on the battlefield to win or whatever. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but that's not what I'm talking about. And I just found out the other day that there is a new subject in, I guess, political science and academia called esoteric politics. And so, I don't know that it's that they've just noticed or if they just have been forced to acknowledge it, but either way, this is a subject of serious research now. That sacred geometry and knowledge of hermetic principles and whatnot actually informs political strategies and military strategies and whatnot. You know, so aside from just an opportunity for us to say, "Hey, I got you," to the elites, um, busted. We knew it. You guys are occultists. Uh, it validates a lot of things in our favor. I've this is something I've said for a long time that we're told that magicians were superstitious fools, and that the Renaissance and Dark Ages, Middle Ages empires that sought their advice were foolish for doing so. Well, then how in the fuck did they ended up taking on over the world if their advisors were giving them bad advice? So we already kind of had a precedent that okay, so your advisors are magicians, and your empire takes over the world. That doesn't quite track with them not having prophetical insight or profound knowledge of natural systems or whatever it is that facilitates, almost taking over the world. Or maybe they did take over the world, and they're just not admitting it officially. I don't think so. I think Asia and England, I do believe, has a lot more land than they admit. I don't think they really ever gave up the U.S. They or Canada or Australia or they just kind of act like they have conceded the title and continue to collect taxes. It's easier that way than fighting people. Path of least resistance, very occultish. But you know what I mean. So we have this increasing amount of validation that the old paradigm was at least too limited in its scope, and that its parameters were too narrow in terms of the ontological model that it had stamped with its approval, right? And then we also have all of this emerging neuroscience that tells us how the gating system works, that allows the political systems to exploit people, that allows the religions to continue to flourish and dominate and distort people's perceptions and generative models in their nervous system. And the thing about that is that once you understand how something is constructed, you can take it apart and you can build something else that's similar, right? That's an absolutely necessary part of this process, that we have the conscious understanding that we know what the blueprints are, so that we're able to deconstruct what is there that doesn't serve us and reconstruct something along those lines that's improved. When Fred Lamborghini or whatever his name was, I doubt it was Fred. I think, yeah, you know what? It might have been Frederic Lamborghini. Anyways, when he built that car, he did it on the bones of the Model T. The universe, if Penrose is correct, and he obviously has to be, I think, with this, the reason that it does this whole process of expansion and contraction is in order to generate, refine, retain data and build upon it in the future. DNA does it, everything does it. So societies also have to do it. And if it's a gradual permutation, it's not as necessary to have an in-depth schematic to look at to figure out how everything works and how the constituent elements need to relate to the bigger system. Like that's why we need to understand our own psychology and consciousness so much, because we have to understand how we also relate to whatever it is that we build. So we have this like almost singularity in physics, neuroscience, evolutionary biology, all of these things, computer technology, all converging at once, just coincidentally, I guess. I mean, you could say on a mechanistic level they feed each other, right? That's not all that's happening. But yeah, we need to understand all of these components in great depth, and we're being handed that blueprint just at the very moment that we need it the most, which is quite extraordinary. And then on the other hand, we have over the last 20 years or whatever been sort of collectively aggregating the skills to engineer our own evolutionary process with metaprogramming, right? So we're understanding how the default mode network works, but also how it is that we can manipulate and attenuate it. We know how to target specific priors and deactivate them. We also know now that the inculcation of a new operating system in the human biocomputer is not necessary. That's not part of it. Timothy Leary actually complained back in the day that psychology was and therapeutic modalities were really just a matter of trying to erase the old data hub and replace it with whatever the psychologist or therapist thought was supposed to be there. And he was saying that's not necessary and that's not right. It's just you're crawling out of one box and into another one. And nature has its own way of bringing homeostasis and optimizing systems. And all we need to do is bring the dissonance, into homeostasis. We don't need to repattern with a new doctrine on people's behalf. This is something that needs to be emergent from experience and emergent from organic processes, you know? And it's really all very easy to understand. Like in the past, when I've talked about how, for example, people don't usually understand the Grateful Dead unless they have taken some kind of entheogen when they listen to it. And people have trouble understanding how it is that they could have perceptual blind spots like that. And the reality is, it's not just with music like that, that's made from a state of mind that has a more subtle modality of expression that we're not generally tuned to pick up. Like, it's another example of those priors. You process music this way because you always have. There's not all these other layers and dimensions that it just normally aren't there, so your brain doesn't even perceive them. But it relates to that these expectations, these emergent or generative models that our nervous system comes up with, that are the how do you say, like when you base something off of something else? There's a word here that I need and can't think of. They're the basis, right? The thing that they're the filter that determines what you're going to perceive and what you're not, right? Is blocking out elements all across the board. So as we attenuate all of this, our experience of reality has greater depth in every domain. Our ability to anticipate future developments in all arenas is enhanced. Our capacity to self-engineer is justified. And that's an interesting aspect of this. We're being handed the keys or the access code to the operating system because we're becoming an adult species, right? And so you have to take responsibility for your own processes as an adult species. And then another aspect of this I wanted to make sure I got to is that I have been doing some research. I'm not going to get into the technicals of it right now, but I have talked in the past about entrainment and possibly entanglement as elements that sort of we can hedge our bets on, in terms of, like, if we do this evolutionary work on ourselves, that it's going to have an effect on the collective net of being, the net of consciousness, right? There is overwhelming evidence that this is true, not only in terms of entrainment. Entanglement's a little bit trickier. I may have been a little bit naive on this, although the jury's still out, because while it's true that entanglement is used for computers on Earth to communicate, or to, I don't want to say communicate. I guess communicate's fine. Communicate with computers on the space station. It's not exactly that data can coherently be transmitted with entanglement. It's more complicated than that because entanglement's kind of chaotic. So at one point, I had been kind of suggesting that because we have seen entangled biphoton pairs or observed them being emitted from the brain, that means that there are entangled particles in the brain, and that light, I think it's pretty certain that it's connected to light. I mean, consciousness is connected to light, right? That just seemed like pretty good circumstantial evidence that our consciousness is entrained at the most fundamental level, and you know how that would actually work in terms of like coherent information transfer, non-local information transfer. Uh, it's not as simple as I had thought. I guess is what I'm saying, but it's still not ruled out. It's just that like how that could be like the medium was not clear. Once again, though, if they can do anything coherent using entangled particles to communicate digitally, I'm sure the same is true of the brain, and we just don't understand the mechanism yet. What else? Oh, but what I was saying is, there's all sorts of other research now that confirms that. I mean, if you think about holographic universe theory and assume that it's true, and the way that information is distributed at the horizon of black holes pretty much proves it is true, right? And then we have holonomic brain theory. If you or if you create a lesion in part of the brain that has a certain bit of information, the information is still globally distributed throughout the rest of the network, right? The only way for you to destroy that information is actually to interface through it with the medium of meaning. And that's interesting because it suggests that meaning is more fundamental than matter. But we're getting off track again, aren't we? So, we have evidence that holographic mind, holographic universe. So if you alter any part of a fractal, a hologram, it's going to show up everywhere. And that's enough for me, really. But what I'm saying is that there's far more evidence in favor of that. And when I'm less frazzled, I'll do a stream where we'll get into all the technical details of the stuff I've turned up. Pretty damn weird, am I right? Yep. Yep. And I apologize, I'm a bit rambly tonight, but there's a lot going through my head. Kind of a good thing, I think, that the Weir stream got delayed because his songs are way harder than Garcia's, and I usually only play Garcia's, so I started kind of playing through Weir stuff today, and I was like, oh, this is not going to come together in an hour, is it? So the computer's like, yeah, I'll save you some embarrassment by like breaking, and then give you some more time to work on it. So yeah, if you guys have any subjects, questions, anything, pop them in the chat, and I'll respond to them. Otherwise, I'm gonna cut it pretty short tonight, I think, because I didn't realize how relatively useless I was gonna be. Just my normal style of just stream of consciousness doesn't always work. Just like the Grateful Dead didn't always. You know what I mean? It's kind of the same thing. It's not something you can just do. It either happens or it doesn't. By the way, we still have room at our events in January, February, March, May, April, July, August, September, November. So if you are interested in that, shoot me an email. Personally, I can't wait to get back to the jungle. And by the way, some people have made cracks about coca chewing on the live streams, and the last one was pretty bad. Like my lips were all green and like I looked ridiculous. But I'm actually gonna edit a recent live stream, and I'm gonna put a little disclaimer in the front. It's like you know, warning, the obnoxious cud chewing happening in this video. But then I'm gonna show you guys what a picture of my feet when I don't chew coca for 2 hours, how purple they turn up here, and then before and after, just to prove the point that like I'm not kidding about this. And hypoxia is not good for someone with a neurodegenerative condition. So it really is a medical necessity. I don't want to fucking hear about it. Once we get down in the jungle, I won't be doing it during streams anymore. But for the time being, it is necessary. And if you don't like it, you can go watch fucking, I don't know, Dakota or something. I mean, I don't know what other channels. I haven't looked at my what else your audience watches in so many years. Nobody's got anything for me? Well, in that case, I guess I should mention it looks to be a near certainty that they're fomenting civil war in the U.S. and World War III simultaneously and deliberately. And my suspicion that it's partly a deliberate sabotage of the U.S. Of the U.S. sovereignty by compromised internal constituents like Donald Trump and probably damn near all of them. Look, I don't know if I explained this in the other stream, but it's crazy to me people haven't figured out that the reason people on neither side are pulling the trigger on like the Epstein files or the Russian asset accusations on Trump is that there are both sides have been compromised, and if anyone does that, then they know that the lid's going to come off of everyone, and that's how they do it to keep them all quiet. Like, I mean, this stuff is so easy to analyze and so easy to see at this point that the fact that U.S. citizens are really this like, the collective pathological denial is like so acute that it is terminal. It really is. It's almost like when you have someone that has paranoid schizophrenia and they're having a really bad episode to the point where they could at any moment like run out in front of a car or stick a toaster in their eyeball or whatever. That's really legitimately how I see the U.S. population at this point. Like they're that unhinged. They really are, a lot of them. And I know it's not everyone, but it's the mainstream, I guess. Because I've been sort of trying to make accommodations for their behavior, talking about signal gating and selective perception and all of these things. So it's totally valid. But this situation goes so far beyond that it's almost as if like it doesn't really matter if we understand it at this point because they're so far over the line that yeah, it's a strange mix of circumstances because I understand the appearance of like impenetrability and one of their main objectives actually is to make the population feel helpless and hopeless. Like that's part of the Epstein file thing. They're showing you the upper limits of accountability, and they're basically saying, "Look, we can do whatever we want with your children, and nothing's going to happen to us." And that takes a sense of value away from people, so they feel worthless, hopeless, helpless. I mean, it's really sadistic what they're doing. It's very much like cult leader control type strategies. So, what I was saying, I guess, is in the face of that, it's like on the one hand, we have now basically an operating manual for our entire nervous system. We know how to use entheogens and, couple them with other esoteric knowledge practices, and you know what I mean, like, and an understanding of cognitive science and neuroscience in a lot of depth. Like, we really have the power to extricate our. Oh, I hate it when that happens. It's always an unflattering. To extricate our being from their programming and mind forged manacles. But then, that's in theory. When you look out at the sea of just absolute fucking lunacy and collective pathological denial, it's like, okay, but in practice, look at these monkeys. Like, we're fucking doomed. And now we don't even have Bob Weir to like aggregate, 100,000 people that might start thinking at any second in one place and try to put some, gnosis inducing vibes on them. But again, we're all nodes in this field, and everything we do to elevate ourselves and to disengage ourselves from the sandbags of dissonance and interference in our own cognitive processes and in our emotional body. It has an effect on everyone. So don't get discouraged, kids. I'm still here, keeping the faith. Almost, though, just as much out of curiosity as expectation anymore. What's going on, Stellar? Good to see you here. I see a few more people that popped in, just kind of goofing around tonight. But if you guys have any questions or topics that you would like my feedback on, pop them in the chat and I'll be happy to accommodate you for what it's worth. For my part, it's just full steam ahead with the same agenda that I've always had, which is just to try to understand everything that we possibly can in the interests of changing the trajectory of mankind. And I don't know if it was Nietzsche or Jung or somebody, but they're like, these monkeys are completely mad, but the most insane of them are the ones that think they can do something about it. Paraphrasing, but I wonder if that's not the reality. Maynard from Tool, people give him shit because he seems like he hates his fans, but that's why. They really thought when they realized what they could do with psychedelics and vibration that they were going to have much more of an impact on a lot more individuals than they actually did in terms of like direct understanding of what gnosis is. And there's I think an old revolver that was totally dedicated to Tool, and Maynard said in there, they asked him about that, and he it was kind of indirect, but he's like, I've learned that you can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink. And that's basically it. Like, he's just like, why are we even doing this now for more money? And he'll come out on stage and say things like, hey, all you stupid drunk fucking idiots, like, and then he'll say, except for you 5 people that are actually able to like perceive and understand what the fuck we're trying to communicate to you. I appreciate you guys. Two of the 4 Tool concerts that I've been to, he said something like that when he came out. I think that's part of the reason Jerry Garcia died too. You know, he was really thinking that they were going to turn on the whole planet and stuff when he talked about that back in the '60s. And by '95, the audience was like, you know, Weir said there were people passing out with nowhere to fall over because they were packed into football stadiums like sardines, and there's people flipping over cop cars and people getting hit by lightning and trees and getting killed and stuff. And like, you know, they got death threats, and then people would crash the gate so they can't even metal detect to see it. You know, maybe somebody's going to shoot Garcia tonight or something. And you know, and so at the last song, he's saying, "The wind don't blow and the rain don't fall, and you no longer hear me when I call. All I need is one final road to take me home," or something. And then he died. And it's like, fuck this, man. I understand the feeling, but I'm not quite there yet in terms of just giving up hope. I think these people all had incremental impacts that did matter in the long run. It's just that when you're talking about moving the consciousness of an entire planet, that's a lot of energy to move, you know? So it just happens incrementally, still exponentially faster than any, mechanistic biological evolution, you know? Like that's way slower than cognitive evolution. So if you look at it that way, we have good reason for optimism, right? I love James. I don't know who you mean, but are you talking about James? What's that girl? First place for your damage or something? James the Seventh, the Asian girl. I've been really digging her music, and also just interviews with her. She's like refreshingly genuine and uncomplicated and direct, and I really like her. By the way, you guys, do me a favor, hit the like button, share, subscribe, consider becoming a patron. I do consultations, so if you want to work through your lunacy one on one or learn more about esoteric knowledge traditions or whatever it is that I can help you with, you can send me an email about that. And we also have space at our events in the Amazon from February to November, off and on. Really excited about November because that's the month that the water goes down and the big anacondas come out. And that's a bucket list thing for me. I've seen a small one in the wild, but I've never seen a giant one. And that will be like a dream, childhood dream fulfilled bucket list thing, you know. And it seems like almost every day we're more well equipped to do the work we need to do, which is pretty cool. You know, it's just a matter of overcoming our own inertia and our own apathy. And you guys have to remember how quickly we recognize a cognitive or emotional state as normal, right? It does not take long for us to register like this is how I am. And you're being bombarded with messages that tell you that you're powerless, that it's hopeless, you know, that they're untouchable, you know, the empire, they can do anything they want and nothing's going to stop them. We all have to be really careful about feeding into their narratives too. Like one of them is that Trump is scared and he's trying to divert attention by starting World War III. I mean, not only is that just overtly stupid, but you know, it's much more nefarious than that. It's way more nefarious than that. They are saying we have done these things, and we're not going to like criminally prosecute any of us on purpose. That's the point of not releasing the Epstein files. It's a flex. It's not distract. You know what I mean? And the World War III thing has been cooking for how long? Since way before the Epstein. You know what I mean? It's just we really need to take extra care to make sure we're aligned with truth before we put any energy into anything. right now. It's got to be in the right conduits in order to build a structure of coherence. That's crucially important. So we all need to make sure that we have thought through all the layers of things before we take a position. And you also have to think about don't weaponize your own belief against yourself. Because if you align your belief with falsehood, then you are compromising yourself. So it's absolutely integral that we all learn to process things on sufficient levels in order to separate the wheat from the chaff in terms of narratives. The reality is, rather than following political narratives because it's your side, you have to think qui bono. That's it, period. And we have ICE rounding up illegals and using them for slave labor for big ag and profit for private prisons. That's what they're really doing. And then we have the H2A farm worker situation. That's what's going on there. And the fact that they shot people 2 days in a row all of a sudden, that fomenting civil war, increasing division, Venezuela, Greenland, simultaneously. Well, also, I don't know, is it like deputy of Homeland Security or deputy director or something, guy with white hair and real stupid looking, was saying like, oh yeah, next we're going to help Colombia and Nicaragua. And by help, he meant take over. So they're threatening to take over the world while alienating all of their allies, breaking UN charters, and snatching up like strategic, like the primary strategic spots while compromising U.S. integrity, and a country is in no position to defend itself when it's at civil war with itself. Like if you can't see the deliberate sabotage going on here, you need to work on your priors. Like for real. That's really the scariest thing for me, that at this point like things are so transparent that with just a like basic understanding of psychology and politics, you can see exactly what's happening. It's not hidden at all. The truth is hidden from no one at this point. Like it's just all Occam's razor. Simplest explanation. Some of the crazier sounding things that I've presented on this channel over the years, like that their political candidates are literally the most opposite of whatever their voting base needs to perceive them as deliberately. That's now being recognized in political science. People were rolling their eyes at me 6 years ago when I'm talking about this, and now, like Harvard is like, it kind of looks like they're doing this shit on purpose. And I just did a stream where I explained why that is. But it's so easy to see. They marketed Trump as the anti-child pred guy, and then he's like the biggest child pred they could find. Like literally the most accusations of like any celebrity and any famous person and pictures, you know what I mean? And then Biden, they marketed as anti-racism, and he's like eulogizing Klansmen, and he said of Barack Obama, come on, the first physically clean, articulate, well-educated black man in the public eye or whatever. I mean, that's insanely racist to say. The first clean, really, like, and all sorts of other shit. And they get to the liberals like, here's your guy to fight racism, Trump's racism. And the right, here's your anti-pred. Kamala Harris like anti-slavery. She's black and she's a woman. She's all, I believe all of Biden's accusers, and then a week later, It's an honor to serve beside this man who protects women. Like, all these people seeing this shit and just hypnotoad. Like, the thing is, it's a very precarious situation because what would it really take for people to suddenly go, oh shit? Like, you know what I mean? It's like the veil is so thin, you can't even believe it's there. And one of the things that I think we might be missing is that that's because it's almost not there. You know, it is dissolving. And that's why everything's becoming so obvious. You know, that's part of the point, is to reveal all of this stuff to us, you know, and gradually enough that it doesn't cause like mass psychosis, although whether that is happening or not is definitely. Ego is huge. People don't want to admit they've been fooled. It is easier to fool people than it is to get them to admit that they've been fooled, and this is why, because they don't want to admit. My father was wrong. You know, I've been wrong my entire life, and the fact that it's so blatantly fucking obvious makes it more insulting. So that is a strategic element, I think, on their part as well. Just letting their nuts hang in everybody's eyeballs is like almost a deterrent from them admitting it. You know, like admitting that they were deceived. It's real easy to do too because the same people that are like it's like a status metric to be politically literate, right? Like upper middle class liberals. It's a huge thing. But it is even more important to be party loyal. So there is a correlation between who is politically literate and those same people being totally party loyal. So, you know what I mean? It's like a safety rail that's installed in the system to sort of balance that and keep them trapped, you know? And they're also completely convinced that if there was any funny businesses, they would know because they have studied all this shit and they know how economics work and they know how diplomacy works and they know this and they know, you know? But they're absolutely not going to um, question whether or not their party leader is a predator or whatever. That's not part of the um, system that they have studied. Anyways, so it's very clever. The more educated they are and the more loyal they are, therefore they're not going to, you know what I mean? Their selective section and their priors are going to edit and they're just, personality addiction. So they identify with the political leader because it's like the alpha monkey, and that's what monkeys do. So for MAGA right now to admit that Trump is a pred is like saying that they're preds psychologically. It's hard to believe, but it's definitely real. The personality addiction. You guys remember when they were the Freedom Party, MAGA? They're like, we got to get rid of censorship and stop the fascist Democrats and all this stuff. And now they're like the bootlicking bunch of bootlickers that we have ever seen. Like the shit that I see, I hope they're bots. Comments when I post about this ICE situation, if there are really that many Americans that think this way and support the Gestapo like that, you guys better all fucking leave. Come down here and see me. Get out of there. Get out of there. If it's really as bad as my comment sections have looked lately, in terms, in those terms, get out of there, man. Just run like hell. Better to run and, how's this expression? Better to run away and live to fight another day, you know? It's wild the stupid shit that they say, and the reason I don't think they're bots is because the spelling is always bad. You can like it's all frosted in hysteria and ornamented in like fear and crusted in propaganda. But for the most part, there are a couple of people that I know that are kind of exceptions. I still think they hardcore come from a place of like hardcore indoctrination, but they're not dumb, But a lot of these like just bootlicking comments are coming from people that are just obviously drooling on themselves. You know what I mean? Like they're never like at this point religious remarks and like pro Gestapo shit only come from people that are clearly like either below the average IQ by about 120 points or they're almost completely batshit insane. And that's really good because that means that just about everybody above the negative 16 IQ point, and with a relatively, you know, sane constitution has escaped religion and fascism. I don't believe in Project Bluebeam, no. Although I will tell you a crazy ass story in regards to that. So back in the day when I was trying to prove to myself that I could really that I had I don't know what to say like preternatural um, parapsychological cognitive capacities. I picked something really outrageous and then did it to see, and it happened. And on the way home, we parked under this underpass in L.A. and set up a tent and camped there that night. And when we woke up, there was a helicopter circling above the tent, and I was like, "That's weird." And I hadn't done anything wrong, but I kind of felt like that it wouldn't be that surprising if government agents were following me around. Let's put it that way. And so we get up and pack up and we get in the car and we start driving on the highway, and that helicopter's right above our car for like miles and miles. And then I needed to make a phone call, so I pulled over in a Walmart parking lot, and we're sitting there resting and making phone calls, and that helicopter's there again, like right over the car. And I'm like, uh-oh, man, this is not good. And so we start driving back towards Colorado from California, and that helicopter is right above the car. And then eventually it's just gone. Like it just suddenly was just not there anymore. And I get back to Colorado, and there's this woman that I talk to sometimes who was a like a very occulty. She was like a high priestess of the Star family, which is like a group of Native Americans. Um, Difficult to explain, but basically you could say like she owned a New Age crystal cruncher shop. And when we got back, I went in there for some reason before I even went home. I don't remember why, but I hadn't even gone home yet. And we go in there, and she looks at me and she goes, they were testing holographic helicopters in LA this weekend? First thing out of her mouth. And my girlfriend and I just look at each other like, that somehow makes sense. So I'm not saying that's what that was, but the fact that that psychic lady, which was basically her job, um, said that to me right after we experienced that is kind of telling. And that lady had a history of proving herself. So like the Star Family group that I mentioned, when we went to this meeting with them, a few of us were given these rocks that were supposedly dropped from a Pleiadian spaceship in New Mexico. And of course, I was thinking, like, sure, like you got these rocks that are worth billions of dollars or whatever, and you're just going to give them to us. But it was weird because there was a certain group of us, and she had one for each of us. And when she saw us coming, she pulled it out from under the table, and I don't know. And they were super weird. Like, we worked with glass, coincidentally. That's what we all did. And my friend that was with me, I worked with him, and he had done it a lot longer than me. And the rock, there's actually a picture of it on my channel. If you like Danny Carey in a Pleiadian space rock video or something like that, there's a picture at the end of it of one of the specimens. And so it has like these, it almost like ribbons. Like it looked like it had been going at high speed in molten form and then cooled, and like there were. It's really hard to describe, but this other specimen had like white stone, but then it had this bright blue, unlike anything I've ever seen on this planet. Almost like a glowing blue LED light, the closest thing I can come up with. And it had it in layers, right? And Clint, my friend, looked at his, and he's like, dude, there's no way to do this. Like, you couldn't like glue. This isn't glued together. Like, it doesn't look like glass. Like, those white layers are definitely stone, And that's what I was thinking too. It's like you couldn't fake this. Like, what the fuck is this? So, right away we were kind of like, this might actually be true somehow. It's like, it just doesn't make any sense. So eventually I realized that I should go and try to figure that out. So I go to Fort Lewis College to take it to the geology department. And before that, though, on the way up there, I stopped at that psychic lady's shop, right? And she was saying something about how the military was setting up a grid in Silverton of some kind, and it was an energetic grid, and it wasn't good. And because Durango is like one of these like energetic like vortexes, and I totally believe that. So, I'm like, all right, whatever, fucking military grid, whatever, New Ager lady, like, I go up to, I go up to the college, and it's Saturday, so there shouldn't be anybody there. I didn't even think about that. But there was a concert that night, so the door was open to the geology department because the theater was like behind it inside. And so I go in and I go upstairs, and there's these two guys sitting in a room, and they have a map spread out. They're geology professors. They have a map spread on the table, and I hear one of them go, "Well, the military is installing their grid from this, from here to here to, and they're talking about this military grid the psychic lady was like, telling me about." And I'm like, because they're thinking the door is closed and no one has access. They don't know a band is loading in and the door's open, right? So they look at me all bug-eyed like, holy shit, man, how long have you been standing there? And so I show them the rock, and they're like, that doesn't look like any mineral from this planet. It's either glass or it's really from another planet. And I'm like, what? And they're like, okay, well, look, there's a guy downstairs in this other office that is like a, gemologist. He'd be better able to, just get away from us. And so I go down to this other office, and I show that guy. He says the same thing. And he's like, take this rock down to Bodo Park, to this laboratory, this chemical laboratory, and they can test it. And if it's not glass, it's from the fucking Pleiades. And so I go to Bodo Park to the chemical laboratory, and I go in, and there's a guy in a, like white lab coat and the whole thing, and beakers everywhere and stuff, and he's like, well, do I have your permission to melt this? And I was like, yeah, if it's bullshit, melt it away, and he's like, all right, well, this chemical, if it's glass, when I drop it on this rock, it's going to melt. And I was like, go for it, so he puts a drop on the thing, nothing happens, and the fucking look on this guy's face, like, never forget it as long as I live. So we go outside, and like, I'm just walking in my car, but he follows me, like, all shocked and shit, and he asked me, he's like, tell me where did you get that again? And I told him the story. He didn't say anything. He just looks up at the sky, like all wistful and stuff. And I was like, all right, man, this is getting just absolutely outrageous at this point. So I'm driving out of Bodo Park and I see a sign that says Homeland Security. And I'm like, that's a good idea. So I pull up and ring the doorbell to Homeland Security, and this guy comes out and he's like, can I help you? And I'm like, I hope so. And I showed him the rock and I told him the whole story, and he's like, yeah, well, it would be ridiculous of me to try to tell you that there are no aliens in the universe, and probably pretty ridiculous for me to even say that there are none on this planet. However, you're at the wrong department. And I was like, what? He's like, we deal with like illegal aliens and stuff. We don't deal with space aliens. You need a different department. And I was like, okay, can I come in and look around? And he's like, nope. And I was like, all right, I'll see you later. So get in my car and drive away. And the fate of that rock actually is that it ended up with this Navajo medicine man called Night Horse. And I'm not going to tell any more of the story. I've told it all before. But in fact, I don't even remember how the hell we got on that subject, except that I was talking about that psychic lady and the fact that she had demonstrated like a real capacity for something, because it was definitely hush hush whatever was going on in Silverton. And about a week later, I was walking around just in Durango with my fiance, and for some reason we started talking about the Hells Angels, because they were a significant symbol for me during this period. My name's Harley. I grew up around bikers, and there's a lot to unpack there. But we started talking about that, and as we're talking about it, I look up the main street, and there's a bunch of Hells Angels riding right, or like in a convoy, right around a bunch of military trucks that are just full to the brim of the kind of rock that you pull out of the mine tailings up in Silverton. So they were definitely hauling, like military was hauling down loads, surrounded by fucking Hells Angels for whatever reason. I mean, they were in town for a biker rally, I think. So that may have just been a coincidence, but man, that was just insane to look up. And, this is exactly what we're talking about. And I'm pretty sure that prior to that, we had been talking about the whole military grid situation. And then we turned the corner and there's like military trucks surrounded by Hells Angels roaring down Main Street. Yeah, well, you know what else is crazy about that rock? I tossed it to Danny Carey from Tool, because earlier when I mentioned that I wanted to I just picked something really unlikely but possible to just do, and I wanted to talk to him anyways. And so that's the thing that I was talking about. That's what I was going to do. I had that rock in my pocket, and when I was talking to him, and it just occurred to me that he was really into minerals and had a lot of money. So, I was like, hey man, check this out. And I tossed it to him. And he's like, dude, what the fuck is that? And I was like, I was hoping you knew. And he's like, I'm into rocks, man. And that just does not look like anything that makes any sense to me. And tossed it back to me. But yeah, what a history that rock has too. And I've been trying to find Night Horse because I honestly regret giving it to him for a number of reasons. The only person that had any real kind of like certainty that they had an ID on it, there's this rock shop on Highway 101. And I brought it in there and I showed it to the curator or whatever. It's like a museum, and it's really, they have really high dollar specimens, and like it's outrageous. So I thought, oh, for sure, this lady's going to know what this is. So I showed it to her, and she's like, yeah, there was this factory somewhere that, like, whatever they were doing made this, like, weird type of glass, and there's only that one chimney in the entire fucking world where it happened. And I was like, so is it worth something? And she's like, it's worth more than any fucking rock on this planet. And I was in such a, like, detached from the material world state at this point that I didn't go, oh my God, I should try to sell it. I mean, it blows my mind that I didn't say, like, can you find a buyer? Because she would have been like, probably. And so when I ran into Night Horse, long story short, like I said, I'm not going to tell the whole story again. We went off and talked until sunup. And just a couple days before, somebody had told me, if the Navajo medicine man ever tells you secrets, you have to give them something. Usually it's oh my god, what is their word for it? I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on this. Call it mountain tobacco. Zilnato. Um, that's all it needs to be. But as we were getting up to walk away, I was like, oh shit. It occurred to me that the fact that this person had randomly said this to me a few days earlier, I was like, that was for this moment. So I have to give him something. And I thought I had a pouch of mountain tobacco in my pocket, and all I had was that rock. And I thought, no way, man. That's too crazy. You can't just. And then I felt like it was some kind of spiritual test to see if I could master attachment. And I totally let go of it, and I didn't even care. And I was like, Night Horse. And he turned around, and I threw him that rock, and he caught it and looked at it, and he's like, what the fuck? And he just like nodded at me and put it in his pocket and left. Never saw him again. But I have tried to track him down. 100%, I would say he hasn't sold it. And then the singer from my band has another specimen. I think the drummer probably still does too. Actually, Clint has two of them. He has the blue and white piece. But I have messaged him and said, dude, like, we have got to find out what the fuck these things are. And he just ignores me. Like, he'll answer me about other stuff. But he's become a born again Christian. And I think he knows that there's something weird. And he just doesn't want to open that door back up. A lot of weird shit happened during that period that, you know, one person lost their mind. Clint turned Christian. Like, it was intense, and I think he just does not want to open that door back up. He wants nothing to do with anything that happened during that period. But I know he still has the rocks because last time I was at his house, I saw them on the. He has like a glass case with like rock specimens. They're still sitting there. And I was like, man, we have got to get those things looked at. And he's just like, nope, not gonna do it. That's actually the picture in my video is one of his. That's another reason I still know he has them because that's the only time that he ever answered me. I asked him, could you send me a picture of the red one with the purple like crystal in it? And he did do that. But beyond that, every time I've asked him about taking it to get looked at, he just does not even answer me. He won't acknowledge that they even exist. Well, and another thing about the legitimacy of those rocks is that a lot of things that these people said turned out to be true. And like Reynolds Kamakawi'ole, you can find him on Facebook, whatever. Contact him. He does every year. He takes a small group of people to sacred caves in Hawaii. I've seen that dude call the wind, like for real. He said, "May the wind blow to confirm the truth of my words and the power of our prayer." And the wind blew so hard that like pebbles were blowing across the parking lot. And other stuff I've seen him do that is like no question that dude is legit. Several like quite a few of the people in this group I've seen demonstrate. They do things like that. Um, so like we got the rocks as soon as we got there, and then we started like having all these experiences with these people, and it increasingly became evident to me that like this could be for real. And you guys might notice I've never said anything about why they would give me a rock like that, and I'm not gonna. I do know what they said, but I'm not gonna tell you. I don't know what to think of it myself, so that's more um, the reason than like secrecy or something. Wild times. Energy has no limits. Well, what is energy? I've noticed that people have this misconception that energy is like some substance somewhere. But if you look up the definition, scientific definition of energy, here I'll do it so that we can get it exactly right. Scientific definition of energy. The fundamental property of a physical system that quantifies its capacity to do work. So what is it? Like fundamentally, what is it? Nobody knows. Nobody knows what the fuck energy is. The ability to do work. Like, there are different types of energy, for sure. But as far as I can tell, all the research I've done, nobody really knows what it fundamentally is. I mean, we talk about converting energy from kinetic to potential, or vice versa, or thermal to electrical, or you know. But what is it? Yeah, I was just scrolling around to see if there's any other, but every one of them just says the energy is the ability to do work. I mean, if you consider electromagnetism a substance, I guess, but I mean, yeah, we don't even know what it is. I think it is basically will in different modalities, you know. Consciousness, the fractal, is consciousness' way of differentiating itself. And an energy is a reflection of that differentiation. You know what I mean? It's a different modality. Beyond that, it's just nothing doing something. So yeah, the only thing that can be infinite is nothingness, because as soon as you have an object, you have limitation. So the great paradox of the universe is that the only possible unity is nothingness. Because as soon as you introduce something, you no longer have unity, you no longer have one. The only possible unity is nothingness, and the only possible infinity is nothingness. And then you say, well, then there can't be infinity because there's somethingness everywhere. But then you get an electron microscope and start zooming into the floor and just keep going and tell me what you come up with. Eventually, nothing. Although, I have a feeling that if you had a sufficiently powerful enough electron microscope, or whatever the hell super microscope. Eventually, you would see your own eyeball looking back at you. If you go straight long enough, you'll end up right back where you were. Sorry to hear about your husband. I mean, I think you've already told me in a comment at one point. I feel like I remember. Well, no one is feeding me with anything to rant about, and I'm pretty burnt out from just life, especially the last 24 hours. I really did know too that Bobby was about to die. I just a couple of days ago, I have these intuitive guides. They tell me things sometimes, or it's always true. And it came up a couple times this week. Bobby's about to go. It's like, oh, I'm sure that's just head cheese. But it's also true that the night that Phil died, I never play his music, and I played four of his songs. I was thinking about the interactions I had with him and how meaningful they were to me, like really intensely. And he was literally dying right at that moment. That during those hours that I was doing those things. And then the next morning, I woke up, and the first thing I saw was Phil Lesh died last night, and I just couldn't believe it. I was just so fixated on his music and him and our interactions while he was passing. It didn't occur to me that that's what was happening at all. I thought I was just reminiscing. Ain't no way it's a coincidence. I've done that a few times where when Robin Williams died, he was my mom's favorite comedian and actor, and they both died the same way. And I was at work in the John, and I just thought, I wonder what Robin Williams is doing right now. Turned out he was hanging himself at that moment. And it's not like I ever think about Robin Williams. I'm not a fan. I couldn't stand him. Kind of just annoyed me. It's not like I hated him, but he just got on my nerves. So that was weird. And then when my mom did it, I was at lunch with a girl, and I just out of nowhere was like, I need to call my mom, and we're just gonna hang herself. And we got back to the hotel room. My phone beeped, and it was the like the ranch hand saying, "Hey man, I don't know how to tell you this." But I even told her the method. And when we got back to the hotel, it's exactly what had happened. And the thing is, like, that type of thing is not just me, for sure. Like, people's kids, something happens to them, mama knows. This stuff's pretty well documented. And it's really interesting that we live in a culture where that kind of stuff will happen even occasionally, and people will still say, oh, it's impossible. And it's like, it doesn't matter if it only happened once in human history where it's well documented. It's still notable. And if it's happened a bunch of times, then it's definitely possible. Like, it's very strange to me that we can predicate our ontological model on things we know to be untrue. like that's, that kind of telepathy or prescience isn't real. It could really be that the shadow part of man is just that afraid that there's actually a God. And that really illustrates how ingenious it was when they contrived the fear element in Christianity and Islam and whatnot. Because you can control the religious people and keep them in your system, your bullshit system, by making them afraid of the wrath of God. You can keep the atheist in his ignorance and shadow and darkness and foolishness the same exact way. Because he can only really conceive of God as his culture has constructed it or not existing. You know what I mean? The neurotypical mind is like linear like that. They don't go, well, there's all this gray area, But that's basically what it is. So he's like, well, fuck it. I'm not going to believe in that. It'd be terrifying to think there's something that's seen everything I've done and that knows everything I think. And, what if it really is judgeful and wrathful? And you know what I mean? So they create this bullshit monster and they scare everybody with it, the atheist and the religious person. Trap them both in one fell swoop. And then, of course, you have these people, like once they're in the systems, they're going, there's no way that there are people that are that much more sophisticated and involved than I am, that they could just think of something like that 2,000 years ago. Yeah, dude. There's probably someone like that on your block, really. Like, anyways, guys, it's getting late. I hope this is entertaining. I know I wasn't a lot of help tonight in any technical sense, but we do that plenty. Sometimes I guess it's nice to just kind of hang out, right? So thank you so much. Hit the like button, share, subscribe. Please consider supporting us. And I'll see you guys tomorrow if I can get my sound stuff fixed and do the weird stream. I was kind of bummed about that tonight, but we'll see, hopefully.